All right, guys. Hi. Okay.
We have enough of these?
Let's get started. I think, does everyone have a chumash? Everybody has one?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Okay, so we are on page 124. Can I ask somebody to start with highlights? Again, this is a huge parsha. There's so much to talk about here. What'd you say? I know. Where's our reader?
Rebecca barrenness of pregnancy.
Okay.
Birth of Jacob and Esau.
Okay,
The personalities emerge. This is so.
it is.
The
Super juicy.
person that the tale of the birthright, a famine forces Isaac to
Mm-hmm.
Isaac and Gerar. Let us dispute over the well. God assures Isaac, Abimelech is the tree. Esau marries. Isaac's decision to bless Esau. Jacob Isaac. Jacob gets Isaac's blessing. Esau arrives for his blessing. Esau's Jacob is told to flee to Laban. The admonition against marrying a Canaanite.
There we go. Yeah. Mhm. Perfect. That's it. No, that's it. Then that's the next parsha. Yeah. You are getting ahead of us. So, okay. So obviously there is a ton here in this parsha. A lot to talk about. This is, there's what for a change. I know. Oh, it was 2000. Was it really? Wow. Okay, 3 years we've been doing it. So every year we come around and something else is something that pulls us. And I think that this year, as I was looking at this, there was one phrase in this parsha that really grabbed me as I was thinking about it. And that is in, we're going to look at it. It's in chapter 25, verses 21 through 26. So right at the beginning of the portion. Let's start. Who can read verses chapter 25, verses 21 through 26? Actually, let's go through 28. Well, yeah, let's go through 28 because that'll give us two pieces here. Yo, go for it. Somebody, excuse me. Bottom of page 125, verse 21.
Isaac.
You got it? Okay. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Which one? Oh, so you're gonna look at the top. Yes. But you're gonna, the bottom is the commentary. So the top, yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yes. Amazing. Go for it. Oh, you, okay, perfect. No problem. Takes a few minutes, yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fine. Fine.
Years old. Okay.
Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts? Come on, give me 3. Yes.
And where ends up being treated and then she's pregnant.
Mhm.
When she goes.
Mm. So are there any, that's interesting. Are there other sections where kind of like Hashem informs them in advance, here's what's going on and here's what to expect? Good, interesting. Okay, what else?
Why does one parent love one and one
Good,
parent love the other?
excellent.
Or how-
Right, okay, good.
I,
Okay, what else?
Why are her babies so tender?
Yeah, like what's going on with these like differentiation between these from the womb already? Yeah, like there's fighting and that's early sibling.
I.
Yes, when she walked by, what are you gonna say, Sue? Exactly, when she walked by a synagogue. So Jacob was, like excited, and she felt kicking inside. And when she was walking by a house of idol worship, so Asaph, and she was so confused. What's going on here? Like, I have this pair that are died. She just didn't know what was going on from that kind of. I think so, without ultrasounds. Yeah, I guess she, right, Yeah. Yep. My first ultrasound that I ever had, the ultrasound, we were in Israel, and the ultrasound technician told me that there were twins as a joke. No, my husband was like, you should be fine. He didn't really say that to him, but afterwards he's like, he should be fine. Terrible.
Yeah.
So crazy.
I was told that by my levels before the ultrasound. You better come in and think your HCG is so high.
So you think you might be having twins? Oh my gosh. Whoa. Right. Which is a blessing. But when you're not, like, no, don't mess with someone like that. Yeah. Right, exactly. When you're 60 too. How old was Rivka? I don't know how old she was at this point. Yes. What else?
So is it?
All questions are smart. Okay. Either is it an intention or is it just information? Right? Like almost like this was just
What I was.
this is the way it's gonna be. And is it, is that like intentional? Is this just kind of informative? This is the way it's gonna be. There's gonna be 2 nations. There's gonna be Yaakov, there's gonna be Esau. When one's up, the other's down. When one's down, the other's up. It's gonna be like a seesaw almost. Set up right from the outset. Okay, what else? Any other questions? Before we get in? Okay. Now,
The word and treated.
okay, we're going there.
Okay.
Okay, what are you wondering about that?
I really do not understand what they're.
Okay, so what are you questioning?
What the definition of that word?
What is the-
And treated Hashem opposite. It kind of sounds like it means that she got pregnant, but then I don't understand other places.
Okay, it's like a begging. It's an entreaty. It's something stronger than just asking someone to do something for you, but you're almost begging. So Laura, that's interesting that you brought that up because we have to go there.
Now I want to like read it with the word begging.
Yeah, yes.
Isaac begged Hashem
Mhm.
opposite his wife because he was there.
Mhm.
Hashem allowed himself to be begged by him and his wife Rebecca.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what does that word entreat mean? What is the word in Hebrew? Okay. We're going to look at the word in Hebrew. We're going to look at some common roots and what's going on here. So loosely, perhaps, Lauren translated it according to Wikipedia or whatever you looked it up that said, what'd you say? Whatever came up. That entreat, that entreat means to beg, to plead. It could be in the verse, we could understand it as prayed. Right? That's really it's a strong prayer. Interesting. Okay, good. So, I like that. Okay, maybe we can come back to that. What'd you say? Okay, good. A partnership with three of them working together. So it's interesting because the parsha begins with this kind of incident happening. It begins with Yitzchak and Rivka begging, pleading, praying for a child, Hashem accepting that prayer, and then them having children, Yaakov and Esav, Jacob and Esau, that emerge from that. Later on, we have in the very same parsha, we have an incident of Yitzchak digging wells, Isaac digging wells, that his father, that Avram had dug before, and he was like reopening those wells. And the wells we are taught also in prayer. And later on in the parsha, we also have these very famous words, the words of Hakol Kol Yaakov, V'hayadayim Yedei Esav. The voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands of Jacob. And what our comment on those words, Hakol Kol Yaakov, we're going to speak to that, is the Kol Kol Yaakov is that the Jewish nation has a very powerful, potent force called prayer. That's our kol, that's our voice. The voice of the voice is Yaakov. That almost like when Yaakov went to his father Yitzchak, following Rivka's scheme to take the birthright, Yitzchak recognized him because of his words, the way he spoke, how it was kind and had a nice demeanor. Our sages say that this is referring to how the Jewish people have this power of prayer. We're going to speak about that. Kol Kol Yaakov, the voice of Yaakov, this power of prayer. I'm going to start with an analogy, which is a prince wanted desperately to get into the palace to see his father, the king. Whatever the reason, the palace guards did not recognize him. They did not allow him entry. They denied him entry to the palace. He said, I have to go see my father. So he went around to the back of the palace. I don't know why there were no guards there. He dug and he dug and he dug and he dug until halfway into the tunnel, he was met with another shovel. And that shovel was the shovel of his father, who was digging from the opposite end to get to him. So he was digging from one side. Now, why the king didn't just tell the guards to open the door? We'll leave that part out. Insignificant and irrelevant for what we're concerned with. Yes, poetic license. Okay, but the idea here is that prayer is like digging a tunnel. It's like digging and digging and digging. Like that dig in our prayer, we're met halfway. He meets us. Now, if you look back at this word vayatar, right? That's the Hebrew word for the word entreated. It's a fascinating word. We don't typically describe prayer in this when we talk about prayer, what's the Hebrew word that we use for prayer? Tehillim is Psalms.
Oh.
What's the word for prayer service? Tefillah. Lehit palel. We're going to go pray. Okay, that has its own meaning and understanding of what's at the root of that word and helps us understand prayer. Vayatar is not the typical way that the word that we use to describe prayer. So what does it mean? We're going to look at it in depth. So the word vayatar is related phonetically to the word vayachtar. What is the word vayachtar? That's according to Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. The word vayachtar, listen to this, is, and he dug. That's what prayer is. Prayer is digging. The effort, the toil, the investment, the energy that prayer requires. And when we persevere here, we will see that the King meets us halfway. Now, full disclosure, on the way here, I called my rabbi, Rabbi Tversky, and I said, Rabbi Tversky, I am going to teach a class. I struggle so much. Can you help me? Can you give me something, some nugget that I could share? And you guys know, I only teach what I have to work on. It's true. I'm teaching this because I'm really speaking to myself. So thank you for listening. That prayer, like anything else, and he gave me a beautiful nugget that I'm going to share just a few minutes. That prayer is an incredible opportunity, and like anything else that holds an opportunity, it also requires investment and effort and energy and time. Like the same way you build those muscles when you are in the gym, and when you don't work out for a week, you see those muscles atrophy, and it's so annoying. Is anyone with most annoying thing? It's been a week. They've I'm back 3 weeks now with these biceps, right? So anything is the same way, that when we put in energy and effort, it builds our muscles. Prayer is no different. And prayer is something that we can utilize even when things seem hopeless. Now, Rabbi Shimshon Pincus, in his very well-known book on Jewish prayer called Sha'arim B'Tfilah, The Gates of Prayer, he explains that vaye'atar have very interesting connotations. Very interesting word that you picked up on that word, because it was something to make note of. It's a very describing prayer. So he says as follows. He says the word vaye'atar can be phonetically related, as we said, to the word vayachtar, which comes from itur, which is a shovel to dig, and it can come from the word itur, which means pitchfork. And a pitchfork, why would prayer be related to the word itur, pitchfork? What is a pitchfork used for? Okay, take out of your mind the devil with the pitchfork. Okay, that's not the imagery we're going for. That's not a Jewish image. Yes, it's bailing hay. It's taking the wheat and turning it over. It's overturning something. So he says prayer is like that. Prayer has the capacity to overturn something. I'm gonna. Yeah, I do.
I just heard the background noise of somebody.
I did too. Okay, I just what'd you say?
This class somebody kept chewing. Chewing it first.
Oh, yikes. Okay. Vaye'atar, I think it would be VA-YATER. Or Vaye'atar. So it's VAYE and then another apostrophe ETER. So we have these two words that it's related to, itur, which is digging, And etar, which is shovel, like a digging, and itor, which is pitchfork. It has the capacity to overturn things. That's interesting. You know, that's interesting. I wonder, is that like, that's kind of like the quintessential, I don't know, I'm just kind of like throwing it out here, but almost like a lot of them were shepherds. And also, if you think about, human beings, the first human being was called, his name is Adam, from Adamah, from earth. So we've talked about this many times, why did God name us Adam, from earth, instead of like blessing or like gift or sky or stars, whatever might be like more spiritual or meaningful? And so the idea, I'm going to take your question 1 second. The idea is that we are a work in progress. We're like raw potential, and it's up to us to like plant the seeds and watch and grow ourselves, and that we all have the capacity to grow ourselves. So maybe this is the same thing, like prayer is one of the big components that help us grow. It helps us root ourselves, and it roots us to God. It's like we're digging in, and that's also wells, which we're going to get to. Like we're digging into the earth to find the water. We're digging to find something. We're digging to accomplish something. We're digging to create something. Yeah, Adrian.
More
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. You're right. So what is this concept of vayetar, and why is it significant? So we have the concept of shovel, we have the concept of pitchfork. It's different than the regular word we use for tefillah, which means lahipalel. It connotes something more. As Lauren read to us, it's like begging, it's like asking, it's like pleading, like again and again and again. So why would the Torah here use that particular word, vayetar, begging, pleading? And I think that the Torah is pointing out to us that asking God for something, even time and time and time again, in this way of vayetari, like begging and pleading and digging and turning it, asking Hashem to turn it over, is very different than asking another human being for something over and over and over again. What do we call that? Yes. I was going to say the same thing, nagging, right? Yes, both of you. No, but I have it in my notes. Look, you'll see it. Is there anything more annoying than when your children ask you for something over and over and over again? Anything. I mean, I challenge you to find something more annoying than that. What?
I say yes.
Right. Right. It's a very beautiful way to say. I finally said, you may ask me 2 times. The second time you can say, Mommy, can you please reconsider? After that, I'm going to lose my mind. And they know I mean it. Like there's nothing more aggravating. Or maybe it's me. I go to like, maybe I have like set up a system where they think if they beg that, I don't know, I go there. I'm like, self-recriminatory that way. But I don't think it is. But then the idea here is there's nothing more exasperating when it comes human to human. But when it comes to God, Hashem wants to hear from us. We're told in Parshat V'Yaschanan that Moshe asked 515 times to enter into the land of Israel. That's a lot of times. Can you imagine anyone asking you for something even remotely close to that? I mean, would anyone still be sane? But with Hashem, it's not the case. That right. So Hashem wants to hear from us over and over and over and over again. And Chazal even say, this is fascinating, if Moshe would have asked one more time, Hashem would have said yes. So, but why wait? And how, and it is, no, this is not, but that's what I'm saying. This is a tremendous differentiation between human beings and Hashem, because what prayer accomplishes relationship. Prayer, when we ask for something, Hashem doesn't tire of hearing from us. Hashem wants us to go to him. And even if the answer isn't always what we want to hear, it's not. But prayer, one of the primary functions of prayer is building a relationship with God. And it's fascinating. So the word trua, which is what? Trua, what's a trua? Shofar, one of the blasts of the shofar, carries with the same roots of the letters of the word vayetzar, to entreat. And so we have these words, okay? We have vayetzar, entreat. We have etzar, which means shovel. We have itur, which means pitchfork. We have trua, which is a shofar blast. And we have reut, which means what? Friendship. All those words have the common root letters. So what do all of those letters? Reut, friendship. So what do all of those words have in common with each other? We've talked about vayetzar, we've talked about etzer, and we've talked about itur. What about trua and itur? Well, what sound is the trua? The trua, exactly, thank you, musician. The trua is the do, 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 do. That's the sound. It's like this repeated, like I'm asking you again and again and again and again. It's a repeated ask. And what emerges from that? Reut, friendship, relationship. Now, this is when Rabbi Twersky shared with me something that I can share with you and that I'm going to really work on taking to heart. So he said as follows. He says that Chazal teach us, that our sages teach us, that Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov each approached prayer differently. He said that actually, that Abraham related to prayer, he called it a har, he called it a mountain. Yitzchak called it a sadeh, a field, and Yaakov called it a bayis, a house. Avram, yeah, you have a question? You're just processing, okay. Avram also related to prayer as amidah, standing, okay. Yitzchak related to prayer as sicha, conversation, and Yaakov related to prayer as pigia. So we have Abraham relating pigia, which is like a meeting, like a, it's like a meeting. So we have Abraham calling prayer har and amidah. So from Avram's perspective, prayer is like, if I'm going to talk to God, I need to go up on a mountain and be like standing erect. Prayer, this is like, I need to be in this like position of like, like an amidah. This is the main prayer. It's called the amidah. But this is the way that I need to converse with God, is on this mountain, this high mountain. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to speak to God as an amidah. It's going to be like I'm standing there. Yitzchak says, no, if I'm going to talk to God, it's going to be out in a sadeh, in a field, where I'm going to be able to remove the distractions, no phones with me, right? And there I can fully engage in this sicha, this conversation. It's going to be, and I can, like, I've removed these distractions. I'm not going through my jewel grocery list. I'm not thinking about like what accent mirror I'm going to put, not think about that, and like my powder room, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've taken the steps. I'm now in a field, I'm away. And Yaakov says, no, when I can speak to God, it's going to be in a bayis in my house, and it's going to be like a pigia, like just a meeting whenever I want. In it, either doesn't know, but he didn't even say synagogue. He said house. Now, whose of those our three avos, there are three perspectives on prayer, did Chazal say was most appropriate? Yaakov. You're right, Julie. Because what prayer is prayer is being able to interact, to engage, to meet up with God anywhere and everywhere we are.
Except, I'm being serious.
Except, no, you're right. You're right.
I find that my time in the shower is my quiet. And
Yeah.
I linger there, and I
Yeah.
often got there.
Yeah.
And Allie's told me before that
Right. We're not, that's right. Bathrooms are not supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, bathrooms are not supposed to be like the space for God. Yeah. Is that what? I think we can like think about why is that like, you know, bathrooms,
Shower feels different.
a shower, yeah, maybe a shower feels different, but yeah, I guess that's interesting. I think there's some
That
form
sounds
of like,
crazy.
well, for women, Julie, for women, that's slightly different, like mhm.
Oh, right.
For women, that is slightly different. For males, they at least need to have some undergarments.
Right.
Learning connects, and there's a couple crazy rules that make no sense.
And
Jesus
that's
says
one.
they're stone.
They're stone rules.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that's a stone rule, I guess. But I think that when the bathroom has like, usually people go to the bathroom in there, and I think that's like, has that,
I understand.
you know, like yucky, you know.
Different kinds.
Yes. Yes, of course. Trua. Terua. Yeah. T-E. Yes, you can hear it. T-E-R-U-A. So we have then, you know, so this idea is that all of the forefathers, they all had appropriate perspectives. But Yaakov's, according to Chazal, according to our sages, his was the right one. Because like Hashem is our, you know, he said like it's appropriate to have a conversation, to be able to meet up with him anywhere and everywhere when we're in our cars, I guess, except the bathroom, the shower, but anywhere and everywhere, be able to meet up with God and say like, God, like, you know, I'm really struggling in this moment. Help me keep my cool. Like, help me use this as a OFG moment. Help me like, you know, really build up my child, you know, like, I have a kid who's struggling with sensory issues now. So like she's constantly like begging, like bumping into my body. So I'm like, oh Hashem, like please just help me to like not shame her for slamming into my body when like really I really want to keep my own body just for me at the moment, you know, but like in any moments in time, how do we turn to Hashem? We have we have the tools, we have the potential, we have the capacity for Vayatar. This is what Vayatar is. To beg, to talk, to develop a relationship, to cultivate a relationship with Hashem. No. And I don't think, you know,
Not you.
yeah, no, that's a really good question. I'm curious to hear what everyone else says, but
Gratitude. I mean, I try to like show my gratitude.
Yeah.
Things are beautiful. The sunrise this morning, like the thank and that way.
right.
Having and studying it.
And they can interpret it.
Correct. No, these are all mitzvot. But the truth is that if you think about the construct of the world, and Liz, it's a really important question, a beautiful question, because I think if we think about the construct of the world and the reason that Hashem built the world to begin with, which is like, no big topic, just like, why do we have a world to begin with? You know, like nothing heavy today. But like, if you think about that, the Ramchal explains that Hashem created the world to give. And the main way that he can give is by enabling us to have a relationship with the ultimate giver, which is him. So anytime that we ask, we are in essence giving because we're building on that relationship. That's what we don't need to see it as we're giving to God. We really can't give God, but we're enabling, like we're in partnership with him. That's why we're here, is to build a relationship with God.
It's like when someone allows you to do that.
Yes, that's super. That's
then
very, but,
they
and that's
forgot
really
to-
why, we're here. So anytime we ask, we're building that relationship. We're digging, we're digging that tunnel. And we're asking like Hashem, please meet us halfway. And he does meet us halfway in relationship yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Very.
I love that. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's very beautiful. I think, yeah. But I think also reframing it for ourselves. Yeah, I love that. I think reframing for ourselves, Hashem doesn't really need anything from us. It's, he's the quintessential giver. But you're right. I mean, the believing in him, talking to him, building that relationship is kind of part and parcel of building that relationship with him in our world. Not in cool. And I think this whole kind of this parsha really speaks to thematically about the potency of Jewish prayer. It starts out with the word vayetar, and then it goes, as we mentioned very briefly later on, it goes to Yitzchak digging wells. Well, wells also are alluding to prayer, to tefillah, because digging into building wells, digging into the be'er, the well symbolizes our need to kind of like dig into our own hearts and pull out, the what's in our own hearts and direct it towards God. There's a saying in Tehillim that says, Shivchi kamayim libech, nochach pnei Hashem. Pour out your heart like water. Shivchi kamayim libech, pour out your heart like water, nochach pnei Hashem, and direct it towards God. So there's this relationship of water, pouring your own hearts out like water. So digging deep into the wells also connote prayer. When we want to pray, we want to like dig deep into our own selves. It requires that effort. It requires digging deep.
Wasn't it about Rebecca being at the wall?
Yes, there was. There's a lot of, we can talk about wells. There's a lot to say about wells, but this is one element, is that it relates to tefillah, it relates to prayer. And then later on in the parsha, we also have, as we mentioned before, Kol Kol Yaakov, the voice of Yaakov. So that even as a Jew, when we feel lost, we have to remember we have that potency of prayer that we can resort to and we can turn to. And even when we don't feel like, we feel like, nah, we're not in a great position. We've just like yelled at this person or that person, or like cut someone off in traffic, or like, whatever it is, right, that we can get to, Hashem still wants to hear from us. So there's a story of the Baal Shem Tov, who was the overarching, the kind of the creator of the Hasidic movement. And he told how on one particular Yom Kippur, he felt very kind of ambivalent going in because there was a big drought. And the drought was causing a lot of lack in the land. And there was hunger and kids were dying. It was really terrible. And the Baal Shem Tov was very worried going into Yom Kippur. What's going to be this Yom Kippur? Are we gonna get a good judgment? And he saw that there was one kind of simple guy in his synagogue that said the words, the Atzar es hashamayim v'lo yeh matar, which means, and he will restrain the heaven, so there will be no rain. And he said it with tremendous intention. And it was almost as if right after he said those words, the skies opened and it rained for 3 days, and it ended the whole drought. And the Baal Shem Tov went over to this man after and said, I saw that you said these words with tremendous intention. What were you thinking? And the words obviously refer to the concept of Hashem withholding the rain. But he said, I was thinking of Hashem being like He imagined Hashem squeezing the heavens like one who is squeezing every last drop of olive oil out of an olive. He said, I imagine that Hashem wouldn't leave one drop of rain in those heavens, and all the rain would just come to us. And the Baal Shem Tov said, even though he misinterpreted the prayer, he was convinced it was that man's prayer that ended the drought. He was so sincere, he was so well-meaning, he was so even when we don't understand, even when we feel like we're in a bad place, Hashem still wants to hear from us. And this is the last story, and then we're gonna move on quickly. Yeah. 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 Mhm. Yeah.
He still wants to hear us.
Yeah.
Tell him off.
That is a really interesting question. I think so. I think like,
You know.
no, I
that's
think,
they want to join us.
yeah, I think this is a relationship. This is, if we're going by that Pigia, if we're going by that Yaakov, what Yaakov said, in a house, like kids get angry at their father
Mhm.
and parents. And guess what? We're still their parents and we still love them. And we are available. We're available. And often if we've like, when we've done wrong, we can own it. Maybe not in the moment, but we can own it later. Not that Hashem does wrong in that way, but we still want to hear from our kids. You like, you get those letters. Does anyone get those anyone else get those letters? Like, you are blah, blah, blah. Okay. Thank you for sharing with me how you feel. Now there's something we can work with here. Like this is a stepping stone. We're not going to close off a relationship just because you're angry. And I don't want you to not, I don't want, as a parent, we don't want our kids not to come to us when they're angry. We still want there to be an open channel. It's the same with Hashem. We're not all, we all go through stages in our relationship with Hashem because it's a real relationship. And the last story that I'll share is about this Rabbi Simcha Bunam of Psha, who went to his own rabbi. I think that's how you say it. Pishisha? I don't know. Pishisha, something. I don't know exactly how you say it. Don't quote me. It's being recorded. Right, I don't know either. Okay, so he went to his own Rebbe, who was the Chozeh, the seer of Lublin, who had this, whatever this means. I don't know how this works. We don't typically do this as a Jew. He had the capacity to see into the future. So that was his Rebbe. He went to him and he said, can you let me know, like, how's the year going to go for me? And his Rebbe said, actually, Rabbi Simcha Bunam, like, it's not going to be such a great year for you. You're going to end up losing your money, and there might be some health problems. And I don't know why anyone would want to know that, but he told him, he was asked, he told. And lo and behold, a few months down the line, his wife and his children started having some health problems, and he sold out all of his wealth to try to address their health needs. He ended up staying at an inn in one of the same cities that he'd stayed in many years before when he had great wealth. And a few days into his stay, the innkeeper came to him and said, you have to have the money that you owe me by tomorrow. Like, you cannot stay here anymore. And he needed to be in this particular city because he was taking care of something for his family. And he was like devastated. He said, well, what am I going to do? I don't have this money. I can't pay him. And he sat in his room and he just cried and said, Hashem, like, I need to pay the innkeeper. I'm trying to do what you want me to do. I'm trying my best. He kind of threw his hands up and just cried bitterly to Hashem. And the very next day, a woman approached him and said, I want to go into a business venture with you. You bring the brains, I bring the money. And he joined the venture and he made back all of his money plus. And he went back to the Chozeh of Lublin and said, Rebbe, you told me all the bad stuff. Why didn't you at least tell me there would be a happily ever after? Like, how could you leave me like this? And the Chozeh said, I didn't see it. I didn't, he said, I couldn't have predicted what would happen if you cried out in prayer. So that I couldn't see. That was up to you. And so what we have here thematically is that we have Vayetar, we have the concept of Yitzchak and Rivka pleading. We have the concept of Eter, we have digging, we have Itur, which means a pitchfork, overturning things. Here's an example of that in the story. We have the tunnel being dug, of us digging halfway and the king meeting us in the middle. We have the trua, the repetitive kind of asking that's very different. And it builds a reut, a friendship, a connection with Hashem. And we have really that this comes through being in a bias, like it's, we just can have regular meetings with Hashem, just like, and it's about building a relationship. It's about keeping the pathway open, the pathway of communication open. And it's effort and it's energy. And it, like anything else, is not easy. And, that's a very real piece to this. Questions, comments before we move on? No? Okay. So let's go on quickly. I'm going to try to say this next lesson quickly because we're almost out of time here. But, okay. For this, we have actually already read this verse in chapter 25, verse 28. And some of you asked this question as we read the initial verses. So we described how the parsha begins with Yitzchak entreating and Rivka being granted children inside of her, and how they were kind of like fighting with one another. And it was very clear from the outset, these kids were on two totally different sides of the spectrum. And we see as they were born, Asa was born very like man-like, a Sue, hairy. He was like made already, like he was like a man. And Yaakov was very tamim. He was very pure and simple. Said that from bar mitzvah, Asa was already into idols, and Yaakov would just sit all day and learn. So they were such divergent natures. How did two children that grew up in the same environment end up with such divergent natures? Okay, good. Okay, we all see that. Good. Right, okay, good. They could have been more, yeah, okay. That's any good parent, right? Like any good parent raises their children according to their own. Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. Birth position, good. Anything else?
Throw it away.
Right.
Just kidding, I love my first.
I know. Some people say, Julie, I've never heard that first pancake, throw it away, but I have heard that the firstborn is called like makas bachoros, like the plague of the firstborn is like, you don't know what you're doing. You have no clue, nobody has any idea what they're doing. Right. I don't know. Right. Right. You just don't know. You don't know what you're doing. Exactly. That's makas bachoros. So this is fascinating because Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch says that perhaps there was a smidgen that Asa picked up on the following. Isaac loved Asa, for game was in his mouth, but Rebekah loved Yaakov. So maybe there was a smidgen, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch said. Maybe there was a smidgen of Asa that picked up on the fact that his mother favored his twin. And I'm sure it wasn't overt, right? I'm sure it was not overt.
But it becomes so.
However, maybe not, maybe, but there was something in her heart that he picked up
I
on.
know.
It doesn't have to be overt, but there was something that he picked up on. And, you know, this speaks to the very first need of a child is what? Is to be accepted and is to be acknowledged, for their very existence to be acknowledged. And that's why every baby is born with lungs that are disproportionate to their body size. Like, remember me, notice me. I'm here. I exist. Right? And then, you know, later on, their like charming smile is what, like, it's like a gift that they're so cute. I mean, if you would see like the terror that my 3-year-old is, he's the cutest human being, but like when he doesn't like something, he doesn't like food, he throws it. Okay. Like, he's like, I don't like this, whatever it is. Okay. I'm like, Goody, we don't throw food. He's like, I'm sorry, mommy. I'm like, it's okay. You're forgiven. I'm sorry I do that. You know, like who can, but like, it's a menace. Like, it's like, you know, it's like, it's obnoxious behavior, but it's a gift at different ages so that people and children can be accepted and acknowledged. Their existence can be acknowledged. And perhaps that was what Asaph sensed. And even as, I'm going to take your comment in a second, but even as children grow up, they differentiate. They continue to need their existence to be acknowledged. And, you know, I'll share with you one little anecdote that someone shared with me. All of our children need to feel acknowledged. All people need to feel acknowledged. All people need to feel that they are important, acknowledged, significant, who they are as simply just who they are. You know, a mom shared that recently she, you know, she has like 2 kids, and she said, my daughter's a pleasure, but my 12-year-old boy is a blankety blank a. And I very much empathize with her, because I am positive with full conviction that her 12-year-old boy acts like a blankety blank a-hole. Like, I am positive. But for her to believe that that's who he is so painful. Is so painful, because that's not who he is. That's how he's acting. And we've all had children, like, you know, Sue talks about how she has this kid who they never gave up on. And we've all had that with our own children. And we all have people in our lives who we don't want to give up on us. And, you know, to be able to look at our children and for people to be able to look at us and say, I accept you. I think you're an incredible human being just by virtue of who you are and what you are about, is such a gift. Even to work on feeling that in our own hearts. And for saying that to others, like, I want to be accepted. I want to be understood, you know, just appreciated for who I am. That's one of the big, you know, pieces in marriage work is like, can you accept me as for who I am? Can you accept me for what I'm about? And I'm going to take questions, then I'm going to go on to one little piece about how Yaakov was able to send the message to his children that he accepted them, and then we're wrapping up. Yeah, someone, Laura had.
I just love God.
Yeah.
For what he gave,
Yes.
what he was able to do. Whereas
Interesting.
Rebecca just
Loved
blanket
Yaakov.
saved her.
Right. Yep. That's interesting. It's interesting. So maybe Jacob didn't, you know, Yaakov didn't pick up on this in the same way. Also, yeah. What else? Someone else was going to make a comment. Did someone else have some? No. So one last thing is that how was Yitzchak able to convey his love and acceptance? And how can any parent do this? And I think that one of the ways is that there's a forgotten art called touch. You know, when Rivka schemed with Yaakov to dress up in Esav's clothes, or to try to take the the birthright that she knew was rightfully Yaakov's. And she said, you have to go, you got to dress up. You need to go to Yitzchak and get this birthright. It's rightfully yours. You need to get it. And he said to him, well, what if maybe my father is going to feel me? Meaning Yaakov knew that this was part and parcel of their dynamic and their relationship, was that when he would walk into the room, Yitzchak would embrace him. And he knew that he would feel him. And that's a forgotten art, especially with our older children. We sometimes forget that, yes, and Liz is like, don't touch me.
They don't want you.
They don't want it, but they need it. They need it. It's one of the pieces in a relationship and a parenting relationship that kids need touch. You know, our kids, our grandkids, like they need us to touch them. So whether it's like a back, you know, like coming behind them and just like, excuse me, you know, that you could get away with. But it's still, and like give a little rub as you're getting by, or like, you know, like even like, oh, my shoulder hurts. Could you like push on my shoulder? Or do you need a shoulder rub or whatever it is, you know, like whatever those things are, is that our older children and grandchildren need touch. And so do we. Like, so do we. We need that for connection and connectedness. You know, I mean, think about the time when people weren't hugging during Corona. It was really hard. It was really hard. We felt much less connected and much more isolated. So there's a lost art here that Yaakov knew. Yitzchak hadn't lost that art. Yitzchak was blind. He didn't have the sense of sight, but he had touch. And it also goes through, if you look through the verses, and we don't have time, he used all of his senses to connect with his kids. He smelled their food. It says in the verse, he kol Yaakov, was he heard their voices, and he tasted. He asked them to bring food to prepare for him so he could taste it. So he used his senses, but most significant on the radar was touch. He used touch, and yeah. Yeah. I mean, it right. It, you know, she had a beginning from, perhaps not when they were born, but perhaps later on, she saw where things were going. I think she, you know, she had a bigger picture and understanding of where anti-Semitism would go, and how Esav would end up perpetually being after Yaakov, not just him, but also his descendants, and seeing that and kind of like having that prophetic knowledge and understanding, and how that was not acceptable. You know, what she saw, I don't know. Did she see the Holocaust? Did she see the pogroms? Did she see the Cossacks? Did she see the Spanish Inquisition? Did she see she acknowledged that Esav's descendants would do this to Yaakov. There would be this perpetual dynamic that would start from Esav. And we see that, but maybe he wasn't treated differently. Maybe it was, but regardless of whether it was treated differently or not, he sensed it. And whether that was you know, Chazal don't say that was the origin. Chazal say that this was the way it was. There was going to be this system. However, he picked up on that and sensed that. But it didn't, you know, the sages don't say that caused Esav to be the way he is. That's like blaming the victim, you know, like meaning putting all the blame on like, well, we caused it. You know, we're not going to say that. Like, we didn't cause all the anti-Semitism in the world, but but she saw that and she said, like, this is where history is going. This is where the world is headed, and we, like, you need to take your fair share of the blessing. And she did follow. Yeah, she did.
God
This
told
was-
her, the elder
Uh-huh.
shall serve the younger.
The elder shall serve the younger.
She had to get
She followed that, and it was very, very clear. It was very clear to her. Very, very clear. And it is like kind of, yeah. Yeah, so take care. You do, yeah. Right.
And when that's where learning before.
They couldn't touch each other. It was so hard. Yeah.
And before they did,
Mhm.
and Katie, is a real
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, the fact that we can't give our son-in-law a hug.
Yeah.
well,
It's different. It's very different. It definitely creates a boundary, a strong boundary there. Yeah.
personally, I think that all the grandson will-
No, a grandmother can always hug her unless he doesn't like it,
Yeah,
which is like what Liz said is like, my older kids don't want me to get anywhere near them. Yeah, of course. Not a in-law child. I do not know a kid that
Well,
comes
my-
into the family, but a blood relative we can touch.
My
Or
brother
grandparents
was
or grandchild.
there and was leaving.
Oh, yeah, that's sweet. So,
Can I ask you a technical question?
yes, and then I want to give some homework.
Are you, when you say Hazal,
Mhm.
is that?
Yes,
just don't
it
know
is.
that
Yes,
word.
Chazal is a synonym for sages. Yep,
I thought so. like,
Yep.
that's what I was-
yes,
I was-
you're right. Okay, so let me just do a very quick what we talked about. We already did a review on the prayer section. The prayer is an entreaty, is building a relationship with Hashem, is, creating that tunnel, putting effort into digging that tunnel, putting effort into digging that well, pouring out our heart and really building that relationship through prayer. And never giving up on it, but recognizing that it is a pagia, it's a meeting, it's, that God is available wherever and whenever we are. And lastly, we talked about how everyone needs acceptance from ourselves, our spouses, right down to our children. And I really was having a very hard time this week with giving homework in only one of categories. So can I do both? Because we only had 2 lessons instead of 4. So can I just, as homework, try for 1 minute of prayer or one statement of prayer, which is really any comment of building that relationship, whatever it is, like God is our Father, He wants to hear from us. And lastly, to offer some form of acceptance and acknowledgement, whether it's in the form of physical touch or something else, to someone in our lives it's hard for us to accept. Okay. So that's all, folks. Questions, comments, thoughts?